Mike Tyson was 18 years old when he stood across the ring from his childhood god, and in 8 seconds of absolute paralysis, he learned that some things are more terrifying than any punch: the fear of destroying what you worship. The year was 1984, November, upstate New York, where the trees had already shed their leaves, and the gym smelled like old leather and decades of sweat. Cus D'Amato's boxing gym in Catskill wasn't much to look at from the outside, just a converted meeting hall above the police station, wooden stairs that creaked, walls that held ghosts of 1,000 sparring sessions. But inside those walls, Cus was building something that would change boxing forever. He was building Mike Tyson. Mike had been with Cus for 3 years by then. The old man had found him in a juvenile detention center, a kid from Brownsville with a criminal record and a body that didn't match his age. At 13, Mike was already built like a man, with a neck thicker than most adults and hands that could break things without trying. But Cus didn't see a criminal. He saw something raw and magnificent, something he could shape into the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Every morning started the same way. 4 a.m. roadwork in the dark, Mike's breath visible in the cold air, his footsteps the only sound on empty streets. Then the gym, hours on the heavy bag, learning to transfer all that natural power into technical precision, speed bag work until his shoulders burned, sparring with anyone Cus could find who was brave enough or stupid enough to step into the ring with a teenage destroyer who hit like a fully grown heavyweight. But there was one rule Cus repeated more than any other, one commandment he made Mike swear to uphold: never ever spar with your heroes. You keep them on the pedestal, Michael. You worship them from below, because the day you see them bleed, the day you realize they're just men like anyone else, something dies in you, and you need that worship. You need to believe in greatness to become great. Mike understood, or he thought he did. His hero, his only hero, was Muhammad Ali. Not just because Ali was the greatest boxer who ever lived, though he was. Not just because Ali moved like water and struck like lightning, though he did. It was something else, something Mike couldn't quite articulate. Ali had made the world respect him. Ali had walked into rooms full of powerful people who hated him and made them listen. Ali had been beautiful and terrible and magnificent all at once. Mike had posters of Ali on every wall of the small room Cus had given him above the gym. He'd watched every fight he could find on grainy VHS tapes, rewinding the same combinations over and over, studying the footwork, the head movement, the way Ali made bigger men look slow and confused. Before bed, Mike would shadowbox in front of the mirror, trying to move like Ali moved, trying to capture even a fraction of that grace. So when Muhammad Ali called Cus D'Amato in late November of 1984, asking if he could visit the gym, Mike thought his heart might actually stop. Cus hung up the phone and looked at Mike with an expression the kid had never seen before. It was something between concern and sadness, like a father watching his son about to make a mistake he couldn't prevent. "He's coming tomorrow," Cus said quietly. "Ali wants to see you work." Mike couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Muhammad Ali, here, tomorrow." "Michael," said, his voice dropping into that serious register that meant listen carefully. "He's going to want to spar with you. I know it. I know him. He can't help himself. He sees a young fighter. He wants to test him, wants to feel what it's like again." "I'll spar with him," Mike said immediately, the words tumbling out. "No." Teef's voice was sharp as a slap. "You will not." "But Cus, listen to me." The old man grabbed Mike's shoulders, his grip surprisingly strong for someone in his 70s. "Ali is 42 years old. He's been retired for 3 years. I've heard things, Michael." His hands shake. His speech is slurred sometimes. The man gave everything to boxing, and boxing took everything from him. Cus's eyes were wet now, something Mike had never seen. You spar with him, one of two things happens. Either you hold back because he's your hero, and you dishonor both of you by not being real, or you don't hold back, and you hurt a man who's already hurt, and you'll carry that the rest of your life. Mike nodded, but something in his chest was already rebelling against the logic. This was Muhammad Ali, the greatest. How could he say no? Ali arrived the next afternoon in a black Cadillac that looked too expensive for the neighborhood. When he stepped out, Mike's first thought was, he's smaller than I imagined. Ali had always seemed larger than life on television, but standing in the November cold outside the gym, he looked almost normal. 6'3", maybe 220 now, some of the muscle gone soft. He wore a leather jacket and sunglasses even though the sky was gray. But when he took off those sunglasses and smiled, Mike saw it. The thing that made Ali Ali, that absolute confidence, that presence that made you believe you were in the presence of royalty. You must be young Mike Tyson, Ali said, his voice slightly thick, words coming just a half-second slower than they should. He extended his hand, and Mike shook it, terrified his own hand was sweating. Cus has been telling me about you. Says you're going to be the youngest heavyweight champion in history. I'm going to try, sir, Mike managed. Don't try, Ali said. And for just a moment his eyes got sharp, focused, and Mike saw the fighter who'd beaten Foreman, who'd survived Frazier. That's what champions do. They don't try, they do. Inside the gym, Q showed Ali around. The two old warriors talking about fights from decades ago, about opponents long dead or forgotten. Mike followed like a child, just listening, absorbing every word. Ali's hands, Mike noticed, had a slight tremor when they weren't moving. When Ali gestured, and he gestured constantly, while talking, the shake disappeared. But at rest, there it was. A small thing, barely visible. But Mike saw it. They watched Mike work the heavy bag. Ali stood with his arms crossed, nodding. Good power. Real good. But you're telegraphing your right hand, dropping it just a hair before you throw. A smart fighter will see that. Mike adjusted immediately, threw another combination. Ali smiled. There you go. Quick learner. That's what Cus said. Quick learner with bad intentions. Then Ali turned to Cus. Let me get in there with him. Just light, just so I can feel what you're building. Cus's face hardened. Ali, you know I can't. 1 round. Cowls. That's all. I'm not asking to go to war. I just want to move with him. I miss it. And there was something in Ali's voice then. Something desperate and sad. I miss feeling like a fighter. Mike looked at Cus. Cus looked at Mike. The old man's expression said everything. Don't do this. Walk away. Protect yourself, and protect him. But Mike heard himself saying, I'd be honored, Mr. Ali. Cus closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them, he'd made his peace with it. Light contact only. If I see anything too hard, I stop it immediately. They wrapped their hands in the small room off the main gym. Mike's hands were shaking so badly he could barely get the tape straight. Hele noticed and laughed. That big wonderful laugh Mike had heard in 100 interviews. You nervous, young man? Yes, sir, Mike admitted. Good, means you respect the moment. I was nervous before every fight I ever had. People don't believe me when I say that, but it's true. The day you're not nervous is the day you've stopped caring. Ali's hands, Mike noticed again, trembled as he wrapped them. But Ali wrapped them anyway, slowly, carefully, the muscle memory of 10,000 preparations taking over. They climbed through the ropes. The ring was small, 16 by 16, not regulation size, just a training ring. Cummers had cleared everyone else out. It was just the 3 of them now, the old trainer, the retired legend, and the kid who was supposed to become the next legend. No headgear, Ali said. I want to see your eyes. Cus looked like he might object, then just shook his head. 3-minute round, touch sparring only. Mike, if you hurt him, I'll never forgive you. Mike nodded. His mouth was dry. His heart was doing things hearts shouldn't do. They touched gloves. Ali's eyes were playful, young despite the 42-year-old body they lived in. Show me what you got, baby champion. The bell rang. For the first 30 seconds they just moved. Mike had been taught the Cus D'Amato style, peekaboo guard, hands high, constant head movement, overwhelming pressure. He started to apply it, bobbing and weaving, cutting off the ring. Ali moved, like Ali still, slower, yes. The feet weren't as quick, but the rhythm was there, that bounce, that impossible looseness. He threw a jab, not hard, just testing, and Mike slipped it easily. Threw another. Mike slipped that too. Good, Ali said, actually speaking while they moved. Good defense. Now let's see your offense. Mike threw a jab of his own, gentle, respectful. It landed on Ali's glove. Harder than that. I'm not made of glass. Mike threw a combination. Jab, jab, right hand, all pulled, all controlled. They landed on Ali's guard, and for just a second Mike felt it, felt what it was like to be in the ring with Muhammad Ali. Even old, even diminished, there was an energy there, a presence that made Mike's skin electric. They moved in circles. Ali threw a lazy right hand that Mike ducked under. Mike countered with a left hook to the body, pulled it so it just touched Ali's ribs. 45 seconds had passed. Then Ali did something Mike hadn't expected. He stopped moving backward and stepped forward. actually stepped into Mike's space, breaking the distance. His hands came down slightly, into that low guard he'd made famous. His chin came forward, just a bit. An invitation. "Come on," Ali said, and his voice had changed. It was deeper now, harder. The voice from the old fights, from the wars with Frazier. "Show me the real Mike Tyson. Show me the monster Course is building." Mike's body responded before his brain could stop it. This was what he'd been trained for. Opponent drops guard, you attack. That's the rule. That's boxing. He stepped in, weight shifting to his front foot, hands already beginning the combination that Cus had drilled into him 10,000 times. Left hook to the body, right uppercut to the chin, the combination that would become his signature, the one that would destroy champions. But then, 8 feet away, 6 feet, 4 feet, and Mike could see Ali's face clearly now, could see the slight sag in the cheeks that used to be sharp, could see the tiny tremor in Ali's left hand even as it was raised in guard, could see something in Ali's eyes that looked almost like fear, though Ali was smiling. And Mike realized, Ali is testing me, but he's also scared. This isn't the Ali from the posters. This isn't the Ali who beat Foreman. This is a 42-year-old man with shaking hands, playing at being who he used to be. The thought hit Mike like ice water. His body froze mid-combination. 8 seconds. That's how long Mike Tyson stood there, completely paralyzed. His left hand cocked but not throwing, his right hand loaded but not firing. 8 seconds while Muhammed Ali stood in front of him, hands in low guard waiting for the attack that wouldn't come. 8 seconds while Cus D'Amato watched from the corner, his face a mask of pain, because he knew exactly what was happening. 8 seconds while time itself seemed to stop in that small ring above a police station in Catskill, New York. In those 8 seconds, Mike's mind screamed at his body. Throw the combination, honor him by fighting him for real. Show him what Cus built. Prove yourself to your hero. But his body wouldn't obey, because his eyes were showing him something his mind didn't want to accept. Muhammad Ali was human. Muhammad Ali was aging. Muhammad Ali's hands shook. Muhammad Ali was not the poster on the wall, the god in the highlight reels. He was just a man who used to be great, and was now trying to remember what that felt like. And if Mike threw that combination for real, if he let Cotters's training take over and turn those punches into the weapons they were designed to be, he might hurt Ali, might knock him down, might do damage to someone who'd already been damaged enough by a sport that gave everything and took everything back. Ali saw it happening, saw the realization cross Mike's face, and something in Ali's expression changed too. The playfulness left. What replaced it was something sadder, wiser, understanding. "You can't do it," Ali said quietly, dropping his hands completely now. "Can you?" Mike shook his head. His eyes were burning, but he refused to let the tears come. "I'm sorry," Mike whispered. Ali stepped forward and pulled Mike into a hug, right there in the middle of the ring. The gloves were awkward between them, but Ali didn't care. He held the kid close, and Mike felt how much thinner Ali was than he should be, felt the tremor in Ali's back, felt everything that had been taken from this man who'd given the world so much beauty. "Don't be sorry," Ali said into Mike's ear. "You just taught me something." They separated. Ali was smiling, but there was water in his eyes too. "I came here thinking I wanted to feel like a fighter again," Ali said. "Wanted to feel that young, that dangerous. But you just showed me something better. You showed me mercy. You showed me that being strong enough to hurt someone isn't the same as being strong enough not to." First climbed into the ring slowly. He didn't say anything, just put one hand on Ali's shoulder and one hand on Mike's. "He's going to be better than me," Ali said to Cus. "Faster, stronger, more devastating. He's going to destroy people. Cus, I can feel it." "I know," Cus said quietly. "But," Ali turned back to Mike, "don't lose what you just showed me. That moment when you couldn't pull the trigger because you cared more about me than about winning. Boxing will try to beat that out of you. The sport will tell you that mercy is weakness. Don't believe it. The real strength, the strength that lasts after all the titles are gone and all the crowds stop cheering, is knowing when not to destroy." Mike nodded, not trusting himself to speak. They unwrapped their hands in silence. Ali's hands were shaking more now, either from the brief exertion or from the emotion. Mike pretended not to notice. They all pretended not to notice. Before Ali left, he pulled something from his jacket pocket, an old photograph, creased and faded. It showed a young Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, then standing over Sonny Liston, screaming at the fallen champion. the most famous boxing photograph ever taken. I want you to have this, Ali said, handing it to Mike. But I'm going to write something on the back, something I wish someone had told me. He borrowed a pen from Cus and wrote on the back of the photograph. His handwriting was shaky but readable. To Mike Tyson, be greater than I was, but kinder than I had to be. The truest champion protects what's sacred. Muhammad Ali, November 1984. Mike stared at the words, memorizing them. Sacred. Tate, Ali repeated. You know what's sacred, Mike? The people you love. The people who believed in you when no one else did. And yes, he smiled, sad and wise. Even your heroes, keep us sacred. Don't pull us down off the pedestal just to prove you can. They shook hands one more time. Ali's hand trembled in Mike's grip, but the grip was still strong, still defiant. I'll be watching, Ali said. You're going to be champion next year. I know it, and when you are, when you're standing in that ring with the belt, remember today, remember that the strongest thing you ever did was choose not to throw a punch. Then Muhammad Ali walked down those creaking wooden stairs and got back into his black Cadillac and drove away from Catskill, from Cus D'Amato's gym, from the last time he would ever put on boxing gloves with intent. Mike stood at the window watching the car disappear, the photograph clutched in his hand. Cox came and stood beside him. They didn't speak for a long time. Finally, Cus said, "You did the right thing." "It didn't feel right," Mike admitted. "It felt like I failed." "Good," said. "It should feel that way. Because you learned something today that I can't teach you in this gym. You learned that some victories aren't worth the cost." They went back to training the next day. Everything was the same. The 4 a.m. runs, the heavy bag work, the sparring. But something fundamental had shifted in Mike Tyson. He'd looked his God in the eye and seen mortality. He'd been given permission to destroy and chosen mercy instead. 13 months later, Mike would knock out Trevor Berbick in the second round and become the youngest heavyweight champion in history at 20 years old. He would stand in that ring, the belt around his waist, cameras flashing, the world screaming his name, and in that moment of triumph, he would think about 8 seconds in a small gym above a police station. 8 seconds when he chose not to throw a punch. He would think about Ali's shaking hands. He would think about Cus's sad, proud face. He would think about the photograph in his locker, the one he'd look at before every fight for the rest of his career. Keep us sacred. In the years that followed, Mike would become exactly what Ali predicted. Devastating, unstoppable, the most feared fighter on the planet. He would knock out champions in the first round. He would make grown men consider retirement rather than face him. He would become so terrifying that his mere presence could win fights before they started. But there would be times after the victories, after the crowds went home, in the quiet dark of hotel rooms in cities he'd destroyed, when Mike would remember those 8 seconds, would remember the feeling of being so close to doing something irreversible, something that couldn't be taken back, and choosing stillness instead of violence. He would remember Ali's words, "The real strength is knowing when not to destroy," and he would wonder if he'd used up all his mercy in those 8 seconds. If that was the only time in his life when he'd be strong enough to hold back. Because after Cus died, after the structure and discipline fell away, Mike would discover that the choice to not destroy something becomes harder and harder to make. But that day in 1984, in that small ring in Catskill, for 8 perfect seconds, Mike Tyson had been stronger than he would ever be again. He'd faced his God and refused to kill him. And Muhammad Ali had called it mercy, and Cus D'Amato had called it wisdom, and Mike would carry those 8 seconds like a secret treasure, proof that once, just once, he'd been the person he was always meant to be before the world turned him into something else. The photograph is still there, wherever Mike keeps his most precious things. Faded now, the edges worn from being held too many times. On the back, in shaky handwriting, "Keep us sacred." He never sparred with Muhammad Ali again. Never needed to, because in those 8 seconds of paralysis, in that moment of absolute stillness, when the most dangerous young fighter in the world stood frozen before his aging hero, something more important than any punch was thrown. A lesson was learned that would outlast every knockout, every title, every moment of glory or shame that would follow. Some things are too sacred to destroy, even when you're strong enough to destroy them, especially then